Yeah, you wanna put that dish in your mouth.
Wish you could slide into my mind and make me mine. Push play rewind. Let's whip outside, and so am I.
Hi, Dylan B. Dickerson White, Mr. Trans USA 2022, and recording over a 4th of July weekend, so I figured I'd look the part. I'm sorry if I'm underdressed, but it's wonderful out here. And we're here with our Miss Trans Kansas, Fay Kawii, to talk to us a little bit in this sort of now post registration interview, I'd say. But, we've been really busy with Pride and everything. We wanted to really give everyone a good solid amount of time. So I'm just going to ask Faye if you'd like to introduce yourself to everybody. Tell us about yourself, why you're running.
Um, Hi, I'm Fay Kawii, Miss Trans Kansas 2023. I chose to run this year just because of the simple fact that I could have ran for any other system, but this is definitely my passion. Advocating for children and the youth in the LGBTQIA community is definitely a passion of mine. It's something that I believe is um, key in the roles that we play as advocates and as elder um, individuals in the trans community and in the LGBTQIA community. We have the obligation to make sure that our children and youth of the LGBTQIA community are prepared and know how to combat bigotry and lawmakers and make sure that we steer them in the right direction so that way they can eventually, when we are unable to advocate later in life, that they are ready to spearhead that movement and make sure that they are doing the same thing for the youth of tomorrow.
I love how you just kind of, thank you, it just jumped right into some of the big stuff right here. Because obviously, I think if people don't know by now, all of the anti-trans, anti-queer bills coming out, and I think that that could be a lot, especially for people who have never been through this before, some of the younger people who have not had to advocate maybe just yet. And so I'd like to ask if you had any advice for somebody trying to jump in to be a better advocate. What do you think that would be?
Definitely do your research. If you're advocating for a specific law, if you're advocating for a specific, whether it be gender neutral bathrooms, whether it be um, trans rights in um, the workplace, make sure you do your um, research and look up the statutes in your state. Make sure that you're aware of the laws that are currently in place and how to go about changing them. Because without that education and without that research, you will end up taking 10 steps back before you could even go forward.
Yeah, we all I think that we've seen something where somebody tries to go out and speak on something, and then they say one little thing that's a misstep, and then it just kind of explodes.
Yeah.
That other side taking things like a mile.
And understand when you are advocating, make sure that you are aware of what you're saying. If you have to practice your speech 300 times, do that. Make sure that you're aware because you can say one little thing just out, not even out of turn, but just one little thing that somebody can take and interpret the wrong way, and it can really take what you're advocating for and what you're speaking about and just making it um, basically making it where you said nothing.
Yeah, yeah, and then we know that sometimes people have this ability to edit video and clips, and so even an isolated statement from what you're saying can definitely be taken out of context. And we've all had to learn some of the ways that
Yes.
to navigate around that one. And I think people said too when you're speaking, for every minute of speech, you have to have like an hour of practice,
Yes.
like that, which is
Yes.
it sounds crazy, but it does actually help.
Well, and then also understand perception is key. The perception of what you say, how you look, what you do when you are out there and speaking and advocating is key on how people are going to perceive you and also perceive the community. Because if you make the one faux pas of not dressing right or saying the wrong thing or acting the wrong way, they're going to put that perception on every other trans individual and transgender advocate out there.
You're right, and I mean, we know that this is completely unfair, and we know that that's not how it should be. The reality of our situation right now, and you kind of led me into a great question for this. So we're talking about different types of visibility, and not all visibility can be good, like you said. So in terms of what Trans USA can do to change kind of that narrative and change the way people see us, how do you think Trans USA fits into that, and you fit into that bigger picture too?
I feel like Trans USA fits into that because we're moving towards really putting themselves out there, especially with all the anti-transgender bills going out. Um, I actually have started a project. I'm working with a lot of different individuals, not only um, in the community, but outside the community, with some senators and representatives here in the state of Kansas. And I'm trying to start a movement of and project called the Fix the Why Project. And by doing that, we have plenty of outcries. We see them every day. We focus on them, and we are very reactive to that. We go out there, we protest, we get out there and do everything we can to take care of that person or those individuals. But a lot of times we get so wrapped up in that we forget why the outcry happened.
Yeah.
So my project is with Fix the Why project is to focus not only on the outcry but also go back and look at why did this outcry happen, and take in turn take a more proactive stance in fixing the why the outcry happens so the outcry doesn't happen anymore. Is it 100% effective? No. But we do know from experience, if we are more proactive, that we have a better chance of bringing those numbers down, from the number of
Yeah,
outbreaks down.
not just sort of not just treating the symptoms, but actually going at the root, the cause, the disease. Like,
Exactly. And I think with Miss Trans USA, I think we as an organization can take our organization even further with our advocacy and with putting ourselves out there, with taking on this movement of fixing the why and taking care of why things are happening and figuring out how we need to go about educating, changing laws, and supporting the other individuals that are maybe not so queer friendly or trans friendly, and especially with parents, making sure that we provide them with the education and stuff like that. So that way we're not having trans youth out on the streets and stuff like that. So
yeah, and I think that's, you kind of hit on a good point here with parents too, because a lot of times we talk about as adults, we don't have the same experience as trans kids, and then our families. And for me, my family had a different reaction because this was many years ago, and I was an adult. But I think I'd just like to ask, what kind of advice would you have for people who have kids who may be questioning their gender, kids who have come out to them and they just have nowhere to go? What advice would you give?
well, my advice would be, first of all, for the kids, you have to make yourself happy. Like you have to do things for you. Um, you can't let others, you know, just dictate what you're going to do. I understand they're your parents, and you know there's a potential of them, disowning you, kicking you out, and stuff like that. Make sure that you're, going to your community. Make sure that you're talking to people and making sure that you have options. Researching those options and making sure that you have somewhere to go before you come out, because that is a very hard situation. I came out twice in my life, and the second time didn't go so well. The first time I got the, oh, well, you're free fighting over the age of 21. The second time, oh, you embarrassed me and I hate you and get the hell out of my house. I guess we'll edit that. Get that, get out of my house. No, edit that. But yeah. Basically and essentially, the second time, when I came out as trans was to my mother was about a year ago, and I was prepared. I had a place to go and stuff like that. But if I was a youth, I probably wouldn't have had that, and I may not have known where to go. So making sure that you're aware of the LGBTQIA organizations around your area to make sure that you can facilitate that and make sure that you do have a safe place to go is definitely key.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate that too. It's like just being sure to have a plan, and a lot of kids may not know where to go, but you're pretty good at using the internet. I've heard the kids are. So um, there's really any Google search you could find, or even the small spaces, the community centers in everybody's area have access to all these resources. It's just a phone call. They've got people at the desk pretty much all business hours.
Yeah. And actually, I am helping out an organization in August. Um, it's through Beacon in Topeka, Kansas, which is our capital city here in Kansas. And there's an organization actually opening up a transgender youth home. And I'm doing a fundraiser for them and then working on right alongside with them, and then they're going to end up housing um, LGBTQIA youth that get kicked out of their home. So
That's
that's
amazing.
definitely in the works, and we're definitely working on that, and it's going to be a great project.
I think it's just such a need, because I think the percentages of people in our community that end up facing homelessness or even housing insecurity just is it's astronomical compared to the general population. And I think that with the idea that more and more people are like, oh, we need a specific place for trans youth to go.
Yeah, for sure. And with that, I mean, when trans youth are out on the street, there's so many things that can happen. It's really dangerous right now.
Yeah.
Just to even be out on the street, walking down the street is dangerous.
I kind of wanted to ask you about that, and maybe this just in your personal life down in Kansas. I mean, the last year alone has been interesting, and I mean, I know that you, as you have said, this was about a year ago that you had come out, and the last year has changed, and very palpably changed the way it feels to live in the world as a trans person. And I just kind of wanted to know, hear from your personal experience from 1 year ago to today. How has just out in public, how has that changed?
Um, Out in public, I feel like it really hasn't changed. It's gotten um, in some places, in some areas, it's gotten worse just because of the anti-trans laws and very much um, people being very, uh, very anti-LGBTQIA and very. I'm not gonna say necessarily right wing, but just their own personal beliefs are, you know, not very. Sorry, my
No, it's okay.
um, are not very friendly to the LGBTQIA community. So it's been challenging in ways, but it's definitely helped me because then I can take that moment to educate people. I can take that moment when people are calling me names and putting me down and calling me every, everything derogatory and saying that you know, that I am, grooming kids and all that kind of stuff. And I can educate them on what I'm actually doing and explain to them this is who I am and this is what's going on in my body. And sometimes they'll listen, sometimes they won't. But if I'm going back to them with kindness and respect, a lot of times they'll listen. They'll at least listen and consider my point of view and me as a person rather than just their own belief system and what they think about me. So I do definitely try to kill them with kindness.
And maybe I can, if you don't mind, there's a couple of those questions talking about the way educating people on the issues. And sometimes when people are faced with, even in our community, a really tough question or some of those controversial things, they don't know how to answer or they don't know how to approach somebody like that. So is it okay if I kind of present you with some of the things that, or a question that somebody might have said that maybe is like a statement that maybe somebody might have said to one of us that maybe isn't the nicest thing to hear, and see how you would respond to somebody with that kind of kindness?
Yep, that
All
would be
right.
great.
I got to ask before I do those things. So if there's somebody who just says, I mean, I'm fine with, the trans thing, but you'll just never be a real woman. I don't believe in that. What would you say? How would you educate them on that issue?
I would say I understand your viewpoint, but when it comes down to it, there is a difference between a male brain and a female brain. Now, I'm not going to show you my actual um, MRIs and all that kind of stuff, but I will educate you on the fact that a male brain is different than a female brain. And when I went to the doctor, this is what they found. I have a female brain, which means that I'm a female. It doesn't matter what's in between my legs or how I've developed since I've been on hormones. It literally is me as a person, mentally and internally, saying I want to physically look like that on the outside.
Yes. That's such a simple way too to explain to people, and I think that's great. That was it was like 30 seconds too, and it doesn't have to be, these dissertations that, I mean, they're wonderful to read, for those of us that are kind of interested in that sort of theory. But the way you
Right.
can distill it down pretty simply like that, I actually really appreciate that. And there's one more. It's a kind of a different question. And it's something that, I've actually had a lot of trouble with some folks in the community, in our community even.
Okay.
There's a lot of that trans enough kind of rhetoric, where if you're not, let's say somebody said, well, you don't want surgery, you don't want hormones, then you're not really trans and you're not one of us. And I think that's a really big thing that we've had to try to tackle. And I just want to know how you'd sort of approach somebody saying something like that.
Okay. I agree. The infighting is just tearing us down. I hate it. I can't stand it. But I would definitely say that we see that with, especially with our non-binary individuals in the trans community, because they are just under the umbrella, and a lot of them are on hormones or aren't seeking bottom surgery or top surgery. They don't want to be viewed as an individual. And what I would say to that is we need to support every part of our community. And it's not that they're just under this umbrella. They are trans just like we are. And we need to be there for them just like they're there for us. They're there right along with us, you know, advocating with us and for us. And we need to do the same for them.
And, I absolutely agree. And I think that, this kind of echoes what happened, at Stonewall, where the parts of our community that maybe are the most visibly different, people who are in that space where, gender neutral, androgynous, or a mix of traits, maybe on estrogen but keeping a beard, things like that. Those are people that are at the forefront of being attacked right now. People who can't just pass or, safely go about their lives. And I think that our community, like leaving them, throwing them under the bus, just as people did to us years ago, is not the way to go to the future.
No, definitely not.
Yeah, but yeah, thank you for weighing in on that one too. And so, like, yeah, I think maybe I'm gonna, because I just saw him walk by again. So I'm at my parents' house, visiting for the 4th of July weekend, and there's a little dog here named Khan, who loves to just be outside all the time. So I have to ask, do you have any pets, first of all?
I have cat. I never thought I'd be a cat lover. I don't I don't particularly like cats as pets, but I've become a cat mom.
Oh,
And
what's the
so
cat's name? What are
her
the
name
names?
is her name is Salem.
Is it a
She's
black
a
cat?
Yes, it's a black cat.
I mean, if it
She'd be
weren't, I'd be like,
funny
well,
somewhere. I'd bring her on camera, but she's all probably trying to lay down and sleep right now.
she's she's not one for the public eye, apparently.
No, definitely not.
But I asked that question to, of course, because I've got my three back home. I asked that to lead into sort of a different question about, if you could have any exotic animal in the world, even real or imaginary, apparently, because we've gotten into dragons in the past few.
Right.
What would that be and why?
I definitely think I would have a snake. I've always liked how the different morphs come out. Um, I believe like they come out with some of the most beautiful morphs with the different genes, and um, they have even some snakes have even became have started off male and actually ended up being female. So it's kind of cool how you can you know start with one baby snake and end up with a completely different one by the time they're grown. So
That's a pretty cool parallel, actually. Yeah. And I know some of them. I want to say some of them is temperature based, just the environment that they're in. Like, there's a lot of the amphibian reptilian sort of uh, sort of genus species. See, I should know this, but it's kind of like that whole. So there's also in the seahorse thing and frogs. There's a big thing with frogs. That.
hmm
There's just a whole bunch of, and it never made sense to me why a lot of trans people like snakes, and now I'm kind of just putting it all together.
yeah, no, just some of the beautiful morphs and stuff that are out there. They um, there are so many. Sorry, I'm just turning down my notifications because it's beeping through. I apologize. Okay, about all I can do. Sorry.
Oh,
Um, but just some of the morphs and stuff, you never know what you're gonna get. You really don't until the egg hatches. Like you can put two things together that would seem completely amazing and it turn out really bad. And then you can put two amazing things together and make a beautiful snake, or you just get a normal ball python.
you're just like,
And
well,
it's just
that
like, okay, I got a normal. I should have had all these genes, and this is what I get. So kind of
remember
fun to
the
play
little
that game.
diagrams with the in genetics, where you're trying to like
Yeah,
figure out, oh, I got that square over here where there's absolutely.
I never did like this.
They got the first ones, when you had like 4 to 16, not so hard, but then they tried to like make you do
Yeah.
long. And I feel like a lot of people have no idea what we're talking about. This is what nerds do.
Right.
um, I was one of those people that like loved diagramming sentences though growing up. I don't know if you had to do that, but our teachers were very old school. So
I did. I am actually 41. I'll be 42 on the 30th of July. So in a month I'll be 30. Or well, I wish I was 30 again.
same.
Which is a good time. But no, no, I'll be 42 in July on the 30th, and I had to go through all that. And being severely dyslexic actually is one of my challenges in life, one of my exceptionalities. I don't believe in disabilities. I believe in exceptionalities. Um, because basically everybody who has a certain, whether it be dyslexia, autism, or anything like that, every single person that has it is completely different. Every person goes through some of the same things, but in a completely different way. And so with severe dyslexia, I not only have um, problems with grammar and reading and writing, but I also have problems with numbers. And now later in life, I've also become auditorily dyslexic. So it's very hard for me to keep my thoughts organized
Yeah.
as I'm doing an interview or doing a speech and to not completely reiterate everything I say over and over again because I can hear it, but I don't understand it. So if I don't understand it, then I may think that you don't understand it.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
it's something that
I
I've really had to start working on and challenging myself to keep my thoughts organized and especially when I'm out there advocating. Um, Doing that is very difficult because you're on the spot. You have a lot of pressure on you. You're expected to speak a certain way and act a certain way and do different things and say certain things. And if you get caught up in your head, then you can't, you know, advocate properly or effectively.
you
And those days are the days when I make a few phone calls and say, "Hey, this is what I'm doing, and I just can't today. I need you." And I have about 10 or 12 people that if I give them a phone call, they'll come running and they will get out there and they will advocate for me.
I think that just having you share that too, I really wanted to thank you because it's not something that people don't like to always put out things that they might have trouble with, especially as even in running for a pet, we are always kind of told we've got to make everything seem like it's perfect, and we're not about that, of course. And I think that bringing that up is really important. But you also hit on like a thing that I think that in terms of advocacy, just personally, like I would rather give a speech, sometimes than do an interview, depending on the day, because it's
Yeah,
very controlled, and you can kind of prepare for that when it's speech, but you don't know what somebody's going to ask you
right.
sometimes.
The other part of that is making sure, like I said, having those people behind you that are in other organizations, that are your friends, that advocate with you and alongside you to make sure that if you are having a bad day and it's just things just aren't clicking right, that you have somebody there on your side and in your corner to help you to,
Yeah,
step in if needed. Because that's going to be a key thing um, to make sure that what you're advocating for is definitely effective and that you um, end up with the results that you were looking for.
yeah.
So having those people, making sure that you have the support of others is definitely a key thing.
I think that
And
the
not trying to put on too many hats because I know I like to put on a lot of hats at the same time. Uh, but I like to put on too many hats at the same time, and I'll be in one place and I'll have to go to another, and I forget to take off this hat and put on this hat.
Yeah.
So switching from professional to advocate to personal to advocate, and then back to professional, and oh, but I have to be professional in advocacy, so I have to wear both hats. Sometimes that gets a little bit muddy and you can get in some trouble with that. And I have in the past because I've taken on too much and I didn't
I,
realize that delegating out and asking for help is the right thing to do.
and it's a learning process for everyone. I mean, there are times when you think everything, I can do all of this, and then you'll have one of those days makes
Yeah,
you realize if I want to stay functional, I can't like keep doing. But you actually like when you talk about you know having that community support behind you on your bad days. I think that that kind of has fed into. I don't know if you agree with this. The way we've been able to actually strike down some of these bills is because I think the other side sometimes thinks that the way their attacks are going to work is just we're going to feel so isolated and we're just going to give up. But it's kind of a testament to our community that we find ways to come together to support one another, even in stuff like this, and we end up, being able to have that longer fight.
yes, for sure, for sure. And we do that very well. That is something that we do really amazingly well. Is we can band together in times of need. We band together really awesomely, and we make sure that we're out there and we get everything taken care of, and we fight for our rights. But luckily, we have those people. along with my movement that I'm starting, um, it allows us to, you know, change change our way and be proactive and get out there even more and make sure that we're doing this nationwide rather than just in our own communities, in our own cities. Making sure it goes nationwide is key. Um, we can't just stop in our city, in our community, in our state. Because if we just stay in our state and in our community and we don't go anywhere else, we don't go out and try to help other individuals in other states, then what? Then why are we doing this in the first place?
Right. It's not just an isolated thing where we
Yeah.
have a small community to work with. And maybe this is I'm thinking ahead, when we actually do that work across the nation, work to get a lot of these bills struck down. And I'm thinking maybe there's not an answer to this clearly yet, but I was wondering what you thought. What's the next step? Should we strike down all these bills that are out there right now? What's the next step in our advocacy effort?
I think one of the biggest things we've seen here in Kansas in the last few days is the SB 180 bill got passed. They've been trying to pass it for 3 or 4 years now, and because they have had executive veto power in the state legislation, they were able to pass it. They overrode Governor um, Laura Kelly's um, veto.
Yeah.
So, in turn, she ended up because of the ACLU of Kansas and many other organizations, along with two of them that I work directly with, which is Hutchinson Salt City Pride and Black Trans Men Inc. here in Kansas. We have got it to where Governor Laura Kelly has actually said, no, we will continue to let individuals change their gender markers and names on their birth certificates and IDs. And we aren't going to allow you to say that that's not okay. Of course, the Attorney General will probably end up suing her, but then it's up to the court.
Yeah.
Taking things to the court system is really where we strive in our advocacy. The reason being is because the court system has to follow not what they want statutes to say. They have to follow exactly what statutes say.
Yeah.
They have to follow the letter of the law. They have to make a decision based on the information that is given to them. And there's no perception or gray area. Here's the information. This is what we want. This is what they're wanting. What is constitutionally correct?
No, you're right.
They make those because they have to follow the not only state constitution but the national constitution, and that's where we actually strive in our advocacy when these bills do get passed, is making sure that we put in those lawsuits to get in there and actually fight it in the court system, because the court system have a lot more power than the legislature, and they can actually uphold or get rid of bills completely, or they can uphold part of them that is constitutionally correct, and then take out what's not constitutionally correct. So they can uphold parts of it or the whole thing, or they can say no, that this is unconstitutional, and we're not allowing this in our state. So that actually helps us a lot.
So that does. That really is the next big thing, is getting it. It's that.
I think moving forward, I think we really need to focus on getting these bills, into the court systems, as we've seen in New York, Arizona, and there was another one that I can't remember right offhand, but Arkansas. New York and Arkansas, and I believe Arizona. I might be wrong on Arizona. I'm sorry if I am. But they, their court systems have actually vetoed or completely thrown out bills that have been passed, anti-LGBTQIA bills. So I've been seeing different states pop up and following that, and we've really been, hitting those courts and getting those things changed, getting those laws changed permanently.
I you really hit on, like, this is the real big important thing, is being, like, in the beginning too, educating yourself, being aware of things. Um, and I think I have like two more really questions, and one of them is, I hear this from a lot of people that they're just not interested in the political side of things, and they just they feel like that's not their fight. And I understand that to a degree, but what advice maybe you would have for them for either getting more interested or finding other ways to get involved?
I would definitely look into finding an organization that is working within the court systems and the political system. You can do a lot of things behind the scenes, even if you're not really, you know, ready to get into the political side of things, or that's just not your thing. There's a lot of the behind the scenes things that have to happen, a lot of research, a lot of um, things that we don't normally see out in public, out in person, that um, need done. And um, it can be something as simple as looking up um, what laws are in your state or statutes that are in your state. It could be, literally just sitting down and helping write a speech.
Yeah,
So there's different ways to go about doing those things without actually doing them.
you're right.
And just being there to do some of the behind the scenes helping work and some of the legwork is actually a good way to start, and just a safe place to be if you're not ready for the political environment.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even like some of the graphic design work that I've done, you may not even be involved in sort of the event itself, but making a great poster or some great materials for an organization that does that. There's lots of different ways people can offer support without getting bogged down in something that may not be comfortable with yet. So
Exactly.
exactly. And
Exactly.
so I enjoyed this, and that's why I asked you the questions. I mean, I kind of asked based on what people are interested in, just because you're very involved in a lot of this work, and so we kind of stayed on some of the heavier stuff. But moving on to sort of like what's happening in November, and I know we're already getting really excited. We have a lot of stuff coming out this week um, about that, and we just talk so much about what people can do and what we want to do as advocates for people and all these projects. But come November, it's going to be a little bit different. It's going to be about us, and I just want to ask, uh, what's the one thing you'd like to take away from the experience in November?
Um, the experience in November is going to be challenging for me. It's a lot of time frames, a lot of, technical, you got to be here, you got to be there. You have to be where you're supposed to be. And it's going to be very difficult for me to um, keep things in order, keep my thoughts in order, and make sure that I'm where I'm supposed to be when I'm supposed to be there. But definitely just the, sisterhood and brotherhood that we will have while we're there, the connections we'll make, just to be able to visually see these people in person. Um, we see them online, and I know I haven't been online here lately because my life's just been crazy. Um, so I haven't been as visible online, and that's okay. Um, I've been doing other things in different places. Just because I'm not doing it online doesn't mean I'm not out there.
Exactly.
But when it comes down to it, honestly and truthfully, it's it's just gonna be it's gonna be a lot. But I'm just excited to meet everybody in person and actually sit down and talk with them and have a conversation.
Yeah,
That's the biggest thing, is to say, hey, this is what's going on in my community. Are you dealing with the same thing? If so, how are you dealing with it? Or if
yeah,
you're not dealing with it, hey, this is how I'm dealing with this, and maybe you will experience this in the future. So maybe you can take what I've learned and what I've done in my community and implement it in your community.
absolutely.
Hello, this is Miss Trans Kansas 2023, Miss Fay Kawii, and I am here tonight to speak to you about something that's near and dear to my heart, that is education. Without education, we cannot strive to make our situation better. We cannot strive to educate the trans youth of tomorrow to become our leaders of our community in the future. We can only allow our legislatures, our governors, our Senate and representatives, and of course our President and Vice President of the United States to allow laws to be made to hurt us. With education comes difficult conversations. Difficult conversations that ignite debate and compromise to make conscious decisions to make laws that are constitutionally correct for all. So I encourage you and I challenge you to go out there and have all of those hard conversations, all those difficult conversations that are uncomfortable, because without them, we can't make a difference. Thank you so much. Have a good evening. And once again, I am Miss Fay Kawii, your Miss Trans Kansas 2023.
Yeah, you wanna put that dish in your mouth.